In 1985, Steve Jobs found himself ousted from Apple, the company he had co-founded. Fueled by ambition and a desire to prove his critics wrong, he wasted no time in starting his next venture. That company was Next, and its flagship product, the Next computer, was a marvel of engineering and design. While commercially unsuccessful, the Next computer was years ahead of its time. It introduced the world to groundbreaking technologies like the Objective-C programming language, the innovative Next Step operating system, and the concept of object-oriented programming. Next Step, in particular, was a revelation. It boasted a sleek, modern interface that was light years ahead of the competition. The OS was built upon a robust Unix foundation, giving it a level of power and stability that was unheard of in the personal computing world. One of Next Step's most significant innovations was its use of a modular kernel design. This allowed for greater flexibility and customization, something that would become a hallmark of future Apple operating systems. Despite its technical brilliance, Next struggled to gain a foothold in the market. The Next computer, with its premium price tag, was out of reach for most consumers. Businesses, too, were hesitant to embrace a new and untested platform. However, Next's fortunes were about to change, thanks in part to the company's pioneering work in object-oriented programming and its innovative operating system. These advancements would soon catch the eye of a struggling Apple computer, desperate for a modern operating system to revitalize its product line. The stage was set for a reunion that would alter the course of technological history. Next, the brainchild of a determined Steve Jobs would inadvertently pave the path for his triumphant return to Apple and the birth of a new era in personal computing. The seeds of innovation planted at Next were about to blossom on a global scale. While Next was developing its advanced operating system, Apple was grappling with its own set of challenges. The early 1990s found Apple's operating system, the classic MacOS, showing its age. It lacked features like preemptive multitasking and protected memory, which were becoming increasingly common in the personal computer market. Apple knew it needed a modern operating system to compete with the rapidly evolving world of Microsoft Windows. The company embarked on several ambitious projects, hoping to replace the aging macOS with a new, more advanced system. One such project was Taligent, a joint venture with IBM and Hewlett-Packard, which aimed to create a powerful, object-oriented operating system from scratch. Another project, codenamed Copeland, was Apple's attempt to develop a modern OS in-house. Despite pouring significant resources into these projects, Apple struggled to deliver a finished product. Taligent became mired in delays and technical difficulties, ultimately failing to produce a commercially viable operating system. Copeland, plagued by feature creep and an overly ambitious scope, met a similar fate. By the mid-1990s, Apple had spent years and millions of dollars on these projects, only to come up empty-handed. The failure of Taligent and Copeland left Apple in a precarious position. The company desperately needed a modern operating system to remain competitive, but lacked the internal resources to develop one. It was at this critical juncture that Apple executives began to consider a radical solution, acquiring another company that had already developed a suitable operating system. Their search led them back to Steve Jobs and his company, Next. By 1996, Apple's need for a new operating system had become dire. Their attempts to develop one internally had failed, and the market share of the Macintosh was steadily declining. Meanwhile, Steve Jobs' Next had developed a powerful Unix-based operating system in Next Step, but the company had struggled to sell its expensive hardware. Apple, recognizing the potential of Next Step and its underlying technologies, saw an opportunity to solve both companies' problems with one bold move. In December 1996, Apple announced it was acquiring Next for $429 million. This acquisition would prove to be a watershed moment in Apple's history. The acquisition brought Steve Jobs back to Apple, initially as an advisor. Jobs, with his characteristic vision and leadership, quickly rose to prominence within the company, eventually becoming CEO in 1997. Under Jobs' guidance, Apple shifted its focus to leveraging Next's technology. Next Step, with its Unix foundation and object-oriented architecture, would become the foundation for Apple's next-generation operating system, macOS X. The return of Steve Jobs to Apple marked a turning point for the company. His leadership, combined with the technological prowess of Next Step, laid the groundwork for Apple's resurgence in the late 1990s and beyond. The acquisition of Next was not just a business deal, it was a reunion that would reshape the technological landscape for years to come. After the acquisition of Next, Apple wasted no time in putting its new assets to work. The company began developing a new operating system based on NextStep, initially known as Rhapsody. Rhapsody retained much of NextStep's underlying architecture and functionality, but introduced a more Mac-like user interface. However, Apple realized that a complete departure from the classic macOS would be jarring for users. To ease the transition, Apple decided to release a public beta of the new operating system, giving developers and enthusiasts a chance to experience and provide feedback on the new platform. On September 13, 2000, Apple unveiled the first official version of the new operating system, christened macOS X, to the world. The public beta of macOS X, while rough around the edges, generated a great deal of excitement among Mac users and the tech community at large. It showcased Apple's commitment to innovation and gave a glimpse of the future of the Mac. The beta program also proved to be invaluable for Apple, allowing the company to gather feedback from real-world users and fine-tune the operating system before its official release. Mac OS X, even in its early beta form, was a radical departure from the classic Mac OS. It introduced a host of new features, including protected memory, preemptive multitasking, and a modern Unix-based core. The operating system's stability and performance were a breath of fresh air for Mac users who had grown accustomed to the quirks and limitations of the classic Mac OS. The public beta marked the beginning of a new era for Apple and the Macintosh platform.